Hi, it's Daryl with another weekly board gem. And this week I decided to cover a game that came to my mind because of a new game that came out called My City. My City is a newish game. It was nominated for Game of the Year this past year, did not win, designed by Reiner Knizia. And it actually borrows some of the elements of an earlier game of his. Another game of his that was also nominated for Spiel des Jahres and also did not win. And that is FITS. I think officially FITS stands for Fill in the Spaces, at least according to the rulebook. Designed by Reiner Knizia, like I said, published by Ravensburger in 2009. It's for 1 to 4 players, ages 8 and up, and takes 30 to 45 minutes to play, depending on how many of the 4 boards you do. But the length of game isn't really affected by the number of players because play is simultaneous. You know, there's lots of games with those Tetris-like pieces, and they've been called Tetris the board game. Of course, there was an actual Tetris the board game, at least one, maybe 2. Not that great. It's a real-time game. But this is the closest that I've ever seen to Tetris the board game. And it uses the same elements as the new game My City. So if you're interested in My City, I mean, read up on it, read up on the differences, but the core is the same as FITS. So I'll show you how this plays, and then afterwards we'll talk about why it's still a gem today. To set up the game, you're going to give each player all the pieces of a single color, as well as the 2 boards. They're double-sided, 3 and 4, 1 and 2. Each player is also going to get one of these kind of plastic ramps, as well as one of these, I don't know what you would call them, but clear plastic trays. And what you're going to do is to set up the first round is you're going to take board 1, put it in here, and put this clear plastic tray on top of it, like that. It has these little ridges that are kind of raised, which match up with these grooves on the pieces. So when the piece slides down, it kind of catches onto those grooves and just slides down really nicely. So everybody's going to set up board 1. I'll explain all the 4 boards at the end. These light-backed cards are the starting tiles. You're going to shuffle these up and give each player 1. Each player is going to find their piece that matches that card, and they're going to add that to their board as their starting piece. So the way this game works is you'll put the piece on the top, and you'll choose its orientation, and you can flip it over as well. And then when you're ready, you just slide it down. If you're familiar with Tetris, you can't move after you start sliding, and you can't rotate after you start sliding. You choose its orientation at this top, and then you just slide it down until you can't slide it down anymore. Which means that if you were to slide it down like this, that little space there is going to be empty for the rest of the round. So you slide it down like that, and now everybody's ready to start. So everybody has a different starting position. And at the start of every round, you're going to shuffle up these dark-backed cards. These cards, there's 1 card for every piece that players have. Play is simultaneous. 1 player is going to flip over the top card, and then all players are going to find the matching piece and add it to their board. And again, they can orient it however they like and flip it over. So for example, I could do something like this, or like this. Keeping in mind I would be leaving gaps there, which is not good. I might do something like this. And after everyone has placed that tile, then you're going to draw a second card. Now if you draw a card and it matches one that you've already placed because it was your starting piece, that player just doesn't play that piece. They just skip their turn. Everybody else who hasn't played that piece yet is then going to add it. And you're going to keep doing this, adding pieces like so. If you draw a piece and you don't want to place it, this one's not too bad. I mean, I could do that. But if you don't want to place a piece for one reason, you don't have to. You can set it aside and you don't have to play it. But keep in mind that these are all the pieces you're going to have. And you're going to want to try to fill up this board as much as possible. Because the one universal rule on all 4 boards is that dots are bad to leave exposed. Each dot you leave open at the end of a round will lose you 1 point. So you want to cover as many of the dots as possible. And different boards have different ways of scoring points, but that part is universal at least. So keep in mind, if you draw cards, draw pieces, and decide you don't want them and you discard them, and you do that too many times, you're not actually going to have enough pieces to reach the top. So you'll leave a bunch exposed here. And that's basically it. You just keep playing until all the cards run out, all of the pieces are played or discarded, and then players total up their points and write them down, and then start the next round by everybody switching to their 2 board. So the 4 rounds are, in round 1, as in every round, all dots are -1 if they are seen at the end of the round. So you want to cover up as many of the dots as possible. In addition, you score 1 point for every complete row that you're able to complete. So every row that doesn't have an exposed dot will gain you 1 point. And every dot that is exposed, you'll lose 1 point. In round 2, these dots again are worth -1, but these white dots are positive points. If you leave them exposed at the end of the round so they're not covered, you will score that many positive points. If you cover it, then you'll gain nor lose any points. Round 3 is similar, except you introduce -5s. If a -5 is showing at the end of the round, you will lose 5 points. So you'll want to cover those ones. And finally, round 4, which is a little bit confusing. For round 4, you'll see there's pairs of symbols. If you have both of a symbol exposed at the end of the round, you will gain 3 points. You'll gain that 3 points for every pair of symbols that you can see at the end of the round. If you cover both, then you'll neither gain nor lose any points, but you'll lose points if you expose one and cover the other. In that case, for every symbol that you've done that, you will lose 3 points. So total up your score after 4 rounds, and the player with the highest score wins. While I have you, I may as well show you some of the official expansion boards from Reiner Knizia. Board 5 just has a different pattern of all +1s, but there's a lot of them. Round 6 has a very interesting pattern of -5, so you'll want to try to cover this triangle as much as possible, but leave as much outside the triangle as possible. Round 7 again is kind of similar, but you'll see there's a row here, and so in order to build up, you're going to have to come through this row, but you want to leave as much of this row exposed as possible. And you'll see there are -5s really high up, so you have to get some kind of tall pieces to come up and cover those. And finally, this one, round 8, another kind of strange one like round 4, I ended up writing on it because I find it very hard to remember. Instead of pairs, there's 3 of each symbol. There's 3 of each of the 4 different symbols. And you want to expose exactly 2. It's actually the same as round 4, in that if you can only see 1 symbol, you lose 3 points. If you see 2 symbols, you gain 3 points. The catch is that now there's 3 symbols, and if all 3 symbols are exposed, you lose 3 points. So you want to cover, if possible, exactly 1 of those 3 symbols. But which one? Those are the expansion boards, and you can download those from Reiner Knizia's website. That's it. You're ready to play Fits. To me, Fits is probably the closest representation that we're going to see of Tetris in board game form. At least in a game that doesn't have a real-time element, like the official Tetris the board game does. There's lots of games that I've seen be referred to as Tetris the board game, or like Tetris the board game. There's a newish one from the last couple of years called RIL, and Spring Meadow, which is a fine game in its own right. And they all have Tetris-like elements, but this one to me is the closest. Now, one thing to keep in mind, though, is that it's it's turn-based, so it's not real-time. That aspect of Tetris is not seen. But moreover, it's simultaneous play. All the players are playing at the same time. Now, that's a good thing and a bad thing, right? It's a good thing because there's no downtime. Everybody's playing at the same time, and you will occasionally have to wait a little bit for a slow player, but it usually doesn't take too long. There's only so many places the piece can go. But the downside of that is that there's no player interaction. Play is simultaneous, and everybody's just kind of doing their own thing on their own board. So that's usually a bad thing, but for short-ish games, like 30 to 45 minutes, I mean, it's just a different genre of game. And for a light game that doesn't take very long, I don't hold it against it. I like other games like that, like Take It Easy, for example. No player interaction in Take It Easy. It's basically the same thing. But everybody's playing their own game, and in the end, you're going to compare the scores. And I know that's not very satisfying to some people, but for this sort of light experience, I don't know how you would do interaction in this game. I'm kind of glad it doesn't, to be honest. The pieces are really, really cool, right? They got the really hard plastic, kind of shiny, very satisfying to slide them down. And it's a very nice touch to have that sort of plastic ramp. So you have that kind of visual reminder of the gravity pulling the piece down, very evocative of Tetris. Because it has these little ridges that the grooves on the pieces fit in, it's again very satisfying to slide the piece down. And yeah, it's really nice to see the variety in the game too, because on board one, that's basically Tetris. The scoring is very slightly different, but your goal in the first board is to fill up as many rows as possible, which is very similar. Of course, you can't remove them like in Tetris, being physical pieces, but you can still get points for having rows. I guess the only thing they could make it more like Tetris is you could have like multiple rows together being worth more points, but it's fine as it is. But I kind of like that first board feels very Tetris-like, and then in boards 2 through 4 you introduce more variety, right? Oh, here are some -5 you definitely spots, you definitely want to cover those. Here are some positive spots, so you definitely want to leave those open. The symbol thing at the end, the fourth board, is kind of hit or miss. It works, but whenever I teach it to new people, they always feel a little confusing. But I really like the variety in the box, but there's a lot more variety out there if you want it. Now, there is an official variant designed by Reiner Knizia, never published by Ravensburger as far as I know, but it's available on Reiner Knizia's website. You can search for that, and it's boards 5 through 8. And I've printed those out, and they really fit in nicely. They're a nice escalation past board 4. Really great. And if you get fits and you happen to like it, I strongly recommend you get those boards and try to print them out in the right size so they fit in the ramps. And just add variety. And then, you don't have to play boards 1 through 8. You can pick kind of 4 random boards to play for that extra variety. The variety is very welcome in this game, to have those extra boards. There are also some unofficial expansions, 3 I think, designed by Ted Alspach. I have tried a couple of those, and they absolutely add variety to the game. I don't find them as good as either the original boards or the Knizia boards, but that's personal preference. If you love fits, I still recommend you check them out. Maybe you'll see some variety there that you'll like. The more variety, the better in this game. There's also a little, not an expansion, but like a re-implementation of fits in a much, much smaller box. I think it's called Mini Fits. And it doesn't have the plastic pieces, it has cardboard pieces. It's a much smaller board, and there's only 2 boards instead of 4. So they basically just took fits and they minimized it to as small and short a game as possible while still having that fits feel. I like it, but it's no substitute for the main fits game. But it's much, much smaller. So if you love fits, you should probably still check that out, because you can have a little portable version to take with you wherever you go. Still plays up to 4 players. I really like how the game is designed, because there's just that perfect amount of flexibility. Because when you flip over a card and you are given a piece that you are supposed to play, you're given the flexibility of not playing it. You can set it aside and not play it at all. And there are more than enough pieces for you to do what you need to do. So you could actually afford to discard 1 or 2 pieces and not play them if they don't fit in very well, like literally fit in with your plans. But you can't do that too many times, because then you won't have enough pieces to cover the top dots, and so you lose points there. It's just little things like that. It's just really tightly designed, really well designed. This was nominated for Game of the Year in 2009, but it was up against some stiff competition. There were 5 games nominated, and they were all great. Besides Fitz, you have Dominion, Fauna, Finca, and Pandemic. Now, I don't know about you, but I would have a hard time picking a winner out of those 5 games. They're all great games. Keep in mind, this is before the Kennerspiel, so there were a variety of games that were nominated for Game of the Year, some of which were light and some of which were just a tiny bit heavier. I personally think that Dominion and Pandemic just err slightly on the more complicated than Spiel des Jahres, but would have been a shoo-in for the Kennerspiel if it was around back then. Basically, what you want to look at is, for Spiel des Jahres, you want to look at ages 8 and up, and for the Kennerspiel, you're looking at more like 10 and up. And in the case of Pandemic, I think, actually, I don't have the regular Pandemic here. I have the anniversary edition, so I don't know if it says on there. Dominion, the box says 8 and up, which I actually disagree with. It's not a complex game in terms of the rules framework, but all the complexity was just moved from the rule book to the cards. And so now you're looking at your cards and trying to figure out what to do. It can be a little bit much, a little bit weird game for some people that I've taught it to, some non-gamers. Just personal preference. This was right in the Spiel des Jahres wheelhouse. It did not win. Dominion won. But this is still a great game. It doesn't deserve to be forgotten. It does have a sequel, Bits. Now that's a real forgotten gem, and I will definitely cover that in a future video, because that's the real hidden gem. This is not a hidden gem at all. It's just a little bit older, and maybe people have kind of forgotten about it by now. But still an absolutely great game, and this game is never leaving my collection. It's a favorite for our family. Thanks for watching. Remember, older games like Fitz don't stop being good just because new games come out. Take care.